to RI coaching classes. I am Neha Suarez and I usually take up chemistry at RI coaching classes. So I am here to teach you how to balance a chemical equation. Now before we balance, let us see why do we need to balance a chemical equation. Balancing a chemical equation. Now every theory is surrounded by a particular law. So balancing a chemical equation is also guided by one particular law. And this law is called as law of conservation of mass. So this law is called as law of conservation of mass. For example, A plus B gives C. Now I will take my A plus B as reactants. So always which is there on the LHS or my left hand side is called as the reactants. The one on the RHS or right hand side is called as the products. Now this particular law says that the mass of each element. Now if I consider A as one element, A can be anything. It can be iron, it can be magnesium, or it can be carbon, anything. The mass of this particular element will remain the same. Even after it has become the product, the mass will remain same. It will not be increased or decreased. Now suppose if the mass is decreasing in the product, we balance it and this is called as balancing the chemical equation. Now let us see how we can balance a chemical equation through a set of examples. So let me explain you through the first example. I will take the first set of example as formation of water. We all know that the general equation of formation of water is H2 plus O2 giving you H2O. Here H2 is nothing but hydrogen, O2 is oxygen and H2O is water. Now how do we balance it? Now if you observe in this particular reaction, the mass of H2, the mass of hydrogen is 1, whereas the mass of oxygen is 16. Now here if you observe, hydrogen has 2 atoms. Here on the RHS, hydrogen has 2 atoms. But when you come towards the oxygen, there are 2 atoms of oxygen and only 1 atom of oxygen. So the mass varies. In reactants and products, the mass varies. Now we come towards balancing the chemical equation. So I will teach you how to balance through a series of steps. Now the first step is dividing the reactants and products as your LHS and your RHS. H2 plus O2 giving you H2O. Now what you have to do is on the LHS, on the left hand side, whichever elements are there, you have to list it. Now on the LHS, you have hydrogen. Hydrogen has 2 atoms. Now come to the RHS. Hydrogen has again 2 atoms. Next, moving on to oxygen. Oxygen has 2 atoms. Here it is only 1 atom. So oxygen is 1. Now if you observe the LHS and the RHS, hydrogen seems to be balanced, whereas the oxygen is not. It is 2 here and it is 1. So we have to balance the oxygen atom on the RHS. Now the simple method would be multiplying. So my step 2 would be multiplying. So I'll write down the step 2. Step 2, multiplying by a common factor. Now we saw that on the LHS and RHS, the equation is H2 plus O2 giving me H2O. On the LHS, H is 2, O is 2. On RHS, H is 2, O is 1. Now my step 2 is multiplying by a common factor. Now you have to multiply with such a number that it will be equal to the oxygen on the LHS. So which number can I take? Yes, I can multiply my RHS oxygen with 2. So now I have multiplied my oxygen on the RHS with 2. Now I got it as 2. Now once I multiplied, I should always remember it to write in the equation. I multiplied the RHS oxygen into 2. So wherever my oxygen is on the RHS, I will write it as 2 because I am multiplying it with 2. Now if you observe what happens here, H is also getting multiplied by 2. This H2 is already written. Now since oxygen is multiplied by 2, even this hydrogen gets multiplied by 2. So again you will write it as into 2 giving you 4. Yes, now your hydrogen has become 4. Now here on the LHS and the RHS hydrogen is not balanced. So now what you will do? Yes, again you will multiply it with the common factor. So multiplying it to 2 gives you 4. So after you have written 2, you have multiplied it by 2, come back and write 2 here. So now your equation is balanced. So what is 2H2 plus O2 giving you 2H2O. Writing the balanced chemical equation. So what is my balanced chemical equation? 2H2 plus O2 giving 2H2O. So this is my balanced chemical equation. So now let us move on to our second example. Now my second example would be formation of ammonia. So I write it as formation of ammonia. So the reaction is N2 plus H2 giving NH3. My N2 is nitrogen, H2 is hydrogen, whereas NH3 is ammonia. So now let us see how to balance it. Step 1 is nothing but dividing the reactants and products into LHS and RHS. Now below write down the equation, that is N2 plus H2 giving NH3. Now list the elements which are on the LHS. On the LHS I have my nitrogen. Nitrogen giving 2 atoms. On the RHS it has 1 atom. Now coming to the next element, it is hydrogen, 2 atoms. RHS hydrogen having 3 atoms. Now if you observe these both elements, they are not balanced. So we can proceed with any one of them. So first we will move towards the nitrogen, because nitrogen is simple to balance. So my step 2 would be multiplying with the common factor. N2 plus H2 giving you NH3. On LHS, RHS, N is 2, H is 2, N is 1, H is 3. Yes, now I will begin with my nitrogen. So on my RHS, I will multiply the nitrogen with 2. So I will get it as 2. Once I multiply it with 2, I will come back and again I will multiply it in the reaction. Always remember to write it, don't forget. So once I have multiplied my product with 2, if you observe, the hydrogen is also multiplied with 2. Now I will come back and multiply my hydrogen with 2. Now if you see, your nitrogen is balanced, but your hydrogen is 2 here, it is 6. Now again you have to multiply it with the common factor. So now what you can do, if you see it, observe carefully, you can multiply it with 3. So multiply it with 3, you get it as 6. Come back and multiply by 3 again. So now this is your balanced equation. So your step 3 would be writing the balanced equation. Writing the balanced chemical equation, that is your N2 plus 3H2 giving 2NH3. So this is your final balanced chemical equation.